Welcome back to another Monday Match Points video as we move into the volleyball season. I have Ken and Craig and Kim with me again this week, and we're going to try to touch on a few of the other rules changes in high school volleyball that were brought forth by the NFHS Rules book this year, as well as just some differences and protocols maybe that we have. Maybe that's not necessarily a rule, but something that we want to make sure that officials in Nebraska are aware of. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Kim.
Okay, good afternoon or morning or whenever you're watching this. Just wanted to bring up timeouts. I know many times when there's a timeout, we blow the whistle and, that starts the timeout, but we want to allow time for the girls to get to their benches and they receive the full minute. So as officials, make sure that you're not rushing the timeout. And of course, at the end of the timeout, we always end with a whistle and then end with a horn so that we have that same sequence throughout everywhere. So it's a double whistle and then the horn. And that's how we start the match so that the girls get used to that. So and then also, if there is a team out on the floor ready to play and the other one is still, you are not going to be blowing your whistle unless it's at that 15 seconds. So just do not rush. Make sure that the girls and the coaches are given their full minute. And then also with that, I'd like to talk about where we're standing at the beginning of matches. So R1 and L1 will be on the R1 side facing the court, and then R2 and L2 will be on the opposite side. So not how we did it last year, but the year, I think years prior, but both line judge and refs will be facing the court.
And I would add, before we get into some other things, that was something that our group talked about leading into this season of wanting to make that change just based on feedback that we had received from officials last year. And then the NFHS actually updated the protocol in the officials manual to exactly what we had been talking about doing this year anyway. So I think that's a win-win for everybody.
And it allows the R2 to do preventative officiating, making sure lineup, scorebook, I mean, your team is ready. So.
Craig, take it away.
Okay, so one of the big changes that we'll see is the line judges switching sides this year. Per the rule book, it says it's for fairness reasons. So that's one of the things that we're really going to have to make sure that we tell our line judges, because this is going to be brand new to them. So we'll want to make sure that we tell them in our pre-match that they're going to be switching sides every set. I know some are probably not going to like it because they may not like to be by the side where the coaches are. But it's just something that since we're going to stay on the same sides as far as the teams go, that we are going to have to switch sides with the line judges every set. So again, like I was just saying, just make sure that we remind the line judges to do that. And honestly, at the beginning of the year, they probably will forget and won't do it. So we're going to have to make sure as officials that we're like making sure we that happens at the end of the set. So that's kind of the only thing I have on that.
One thing I would add to that too, just while we're talking about it, the switching sides in terms of teams is a state choice. And so that's something that in Nebraska, I think this is the 5th year that we are not going to be switching sides. We're going to be staying on the same team bench throughout the match. That's something that as a state, we have the ability to change if we want to. Last year during the season, I actually sent a survey out to officials, to coaches, and to activities administrators. And the resounding answer from all 3 groups was that we wanted to remain on the same team bench throughout the match. Those results came in anywhere from 70 to 80% in favor of staying on that same team bench throughout the match, whether it was in any individual group there. And so I would anticipate sending out another survey like that probably at the end of the season this year, after folks have been able to see how line judges switching sides has worked. And if we decide that, we would like to go back to having teams switch sides, that's something that we can do. We're not going to do it this season, but we'll look at that. And then, of course, if we did go that direction and our teams began switching sides again, the line judges would then remain on the same side. This is a reaction to the ability for teams to stay on the same bench. So because we are staying on the same bench, that's why the line judges are moving this year. So just wanted to clarify that. Ken, go ahead.
Okay, what I want to talk about, there are a number of rule changes. I only want to talk about one today. And most of the rule changes will not be visible to the fans. They'll be visible only to the officials and to the coaches. But one that you might run into is we're going to address the libero. If the libero goes in for a player and the libero gets injured during that play, then the coach must replace that libero with the replacement player, the player that the libero went in for. Now, this year, it allows the coach during that same, when period has stopped, they can now, after the correct replacement player has gone in, they can do a substitution for that player that replaced the injured libero. And they can do only one substitution, only for that player, and the other team cannot substitute during that period. So the only really change is if the libero gets injured during play and they need to sub out, the player that libero went in for, that same player goes back, and now this year we allow a substitution by that coach for that replacement player.
So that means that they can designate another libero for that set, correct?
If they want to, they can redesignate using the same jersey, a different colored jersey, as long as it's contrasting. But maybe the libero only came out because she's injured and the coach says, I want to wait for 2 or 3 plays. But if they redesignate, there's no penalty, but the injured libero cannot go back in that set. At the next set, the coach has to make a decision and designate one libero for the following set.
Yes, and with that, Ken, line, and you already kind of said this, but they don't have to make that redesignation right at that time. Like you said, they could wait 5 points to see. So I think that's important, like you had mentioned too.
Great information. One thing I would add on the libero rule change, just talking with some of my colleagues in other states when we had a meeting this summer, some of the intent behind that rule change is just to avoid potentially putting a kid in a bad position because of an injury. That was something that the NFHS Rules Committee talked about, and that you don't want to necessarily have to bring someone back into the match out of position and put a kid in a bad spot only because one of their teammates was injured. And so I think that's a really good rule change. It is a change for people to get used to, but I think it's good just to try to keep the game flowing the way that it should and not penalize a team for an injury potentially. So with that, that ends our Monday match points for today. Thanks to anybody that is watching the video. Thank you, Ken and Craig and Kim, for your time. And we will see you next time. Hope you have a great week.